And we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. It's actually a little surprising we're back, and we'll get into the elephant in the room right now. The last episode, very possibly, is going to just have been a lost episode completely because in the middle of the streaming it triggered a adult content porn automation detection and deleted my entire YouTube channel with no warnings, which is my channel. I don't believe it's ever had any warnings or any strikes. If it has had anything, it's had a copyright strike or something months, if not years ago, probably years ago. So I appealed the decision and immediately got the automated 30 minutes later on a 3-hour stream. We were right, and we're not going to do anything. And honestly, I thought it was pretty much just that at that point. And honestly, I wasn't feeling too bad about it. Like, there's nothing Google or YouTube can do to stop me from making videos if I want to continue to make videos. Now, there are scenarios, certainly, with my Smart On Air sign product being developed, that starts to go on sale and that takes all my time away. But there certainly are other scenarios that I won't get into. That's the reason for why I might just stop making videos of some sort. But I mean, I could have always gone to Twitch. I could have always gone to Facebook. So I definitely have a couple options. They're not great options. Streaming on Twitch would be very difficult to ever get to the point where I could actually upload pre-recorded videos instead of just streaming on Twitch. So it probably would have been a weird situation in which I was streaming on Twitch originally and then putting videos up on Facebook, which nobody would see it on Facebook almost certainly. A lot of my videos are backed up to BitChute, but the peer-to-peer aspect of BitChute is weird, and so it is kind of difficult to guarantee that the longer videos or live streams or anything like that are actually making it to BitChute, short of, instead of just YouTube Shorts, which are really short, making it to BitChute. It seems like mostly YouTube Shorts are making it to BitChute, and that's about it. But yeah. And there is a federated solution, at least one federated solution, probably more than one, where I could eventually get my server working well enough that I could just have, or get my server working at all, I could just put videos on my own server. I don't know if I could really afford the storage space there, but I really should have local backups for all my footage, and I don't, unfortunately, and that is the biggest danger of a YouTube channel being deleted. Which honestly, it makes an argument that I should just stop making videos on my YouTube channel and just leave it as is and say it's too risky now that the channel has a warning on it, because yeah, let me finish the story there. Yeah, so I thought my channel was going to be deleted and just stay deleted. I did the only thing that is effective with YouTube, which is to go on Twitter or X and complain about it, saying just like, and then they investigated it, and then they within a day undeleted my channel. The messaging everywhere on YouTube is wrong. Like, I just saw when I started streaming, it said that the stream was shut down because it detected copyrighted music. The initial things seems to have probably been accurate as far as it being a adult content reasoning I'm assuming that that is correct, and that they aren't trying to, and that this isn't just more of a mistake, and actually nothing I did should have triggered anything. I'm assuming that their stance really is a case where they did not like either me looking and describing adult games, or there was something about the auto blur that wasn't good enough, or the auto blur didn't trigger, or even the cosplay I talked about fairly early in the last stream triggered something. Honestly, it may very well have been the cosplay. So there definitely will be some adjustments and changes, and I probably shouldn't try to upload even a completely butchered edited version of the last episode until the warning drops off, assuming the warning does drop off. I haven't even investigated that as far as how that goes, which there couldn't really have been a better time to do that, but having long 3-hour streams and just having a huge amount of them on my hard drive and not uploading any of them for say 3 to 6 months is probably not doable. So I don't know. I don't know what to really do with even the edited version of that video. The safest thing would be to do nothing, and honestly, safety really needs to be considered here, considering how their algorithms are so bad as far as just not triggering the right actions. Like the idea of deleting a 10-year-old channel, which is, let's just say roughly my channel is 10 years old. I'm pretty sure it's maybe a little less than that, or maybe a little bit more than that, but roughly 10 years. Just deleting it, that never had any strikes, never had any warnings, is not really acceptable. And the fact that it's not acceptable to me, it's probably perfectly acceptable to YouTube. Let's go ahead and open this pack. We can see we've got one more day we have to log in, and we've got plenty of time to do that. But yeah, their rule system, the strike system, is not really a strike system, and that is something that was either changed at some point and I didn't recognize that, or it was something I didn't understand 100%. I would make an argument that there is enough nebulousness in that they had a rule, they talked about a rule, that if it was for educational documentary purposes, you could have adult content and even full-on nudity. I was blurring, so I wasn't even really showing nudity. But then they also have a rule that says aggregating is not allowed, so you could argue that if you're talking about every single video game, you're aggregating, but wouldn't that be every news thing? So should that really be a consideration there? There are the terms and the rules are nebulous on purpose, as always, and the punishment for breaking the rules or being perceived as breaking the rules are inconsistent. Like the thing about even pretending like you're going to have a strike system is that you really have to commit to the strike system, which means you have to commit that there is no scenario where somebody can be so egregious that their channel would be taken out on the first strike. And that's a problem certainly that happens in schools in particular, and sometimes, and it has a lot to do with how a teacher might perceive a student, or a principal might perceive a student, in that there probably should be well laid out, well explained punishments for breaking rules, and that you would really need to just stick to that. Which means if somebody got into a huge fight and put a kid in the hospital or even killed a kid, let's say, then that should be still strike one in the school system, which that doesn't really make a lot of sense. There's a lot of new products here. So we've got really no gems here. We've got this deck. Yeah. Of course, the difference between, say, a school rule system, which usually school rule books, or let's just get away from schools and use the judicial system. There's millions and millions of laws on the books that I'm sure, and definitions of rules, and you should know better. Whereas YouTube's rules are a sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences. They probably should have some much deeper legalese and better examples, and I think they fail at that, but whatever. Alright. I have to be, though, at some point responsible too, and admit that as I saw the rules as they were written when I looked at them a couple days ago, it did seem like it was written more leaning towards the idea that they didn't want my type of content, perhaps in part because they just don't want you talking about adult, in this case video games, even though in the rules they do mention video games, but they're more, I think, leaning towards the idea of you could show the nudity in The Witcher 3, which is a rated M for mature game, versus you can talk about even a blurred version of a game that is just a porn game, effectively, even from the perspective of information, education, and like consumer criticism or purchase advice. So the first big change is, we'll just go through what I think could have triggered it, because they still, again, their systems are terrible, didn't really point me to the part of the video that was flagged, so I don't know particularly what it is, but I would assume it was talking about adult games because it was triggered then. It would make a lot less sense that it was triggered because of what happened like an hour earlier and 2 hours earlier, things like that. But in case, this gives me a great excuse to just not talk about cosplay, which really wasn't ever video game related to. And so certainly if I was making an argument that I was talking about video games and being informative about that, my side tracks into talking about cosplay is very loosely related. Only when somebody's cosplaying a video game character, and even then, there's just no reason to make that to fit division. So yeah, here's a pack that we already have a decent amount of these cards. Take one free pull off this. Secondly, we talked about the GTA trailer. Now, in the GTA trailer, after the fact, I did notice it looks like there is a fat man streaking. So maybe that was it. That's an incredibly rare scenario, and I seriously doubt that was what triggered it, but maybe. So I'll just definitely have to be more careful around that case of, we've got one new super rare, which that's probably a very rare occurrence that we get new super rares or ultra rares. Although it's going to be increasingly a rare occurrence to even get new rares and normals. And then any other news stories that come up like that, I will also have to be just real careful and on my guard a lot more as far as, could it be that there is a trailer or even a still image that shows up on my my websites. See, I would almost wonder if the video footage would have triggered something and it was just completely mislabeled, but nah, I don't think so, because I'm not playing the audio of GTA, and it's almost always detected by the audio. Of course, this is also the second time my channel has been randomly deleted. The last time they said that I did absolutely nothing wrong, and the reason they gave for it being deleted, the automated reason, was spam, which I'm definitely not doing that. So they restored that one. Took them actually a little longer to restore that one, but it definitely feels like YouTube is gunning for channels to be deleted. My channel uniquely or especially, probably not, but I wouldn't be surprised if I'm on some list of channels that just have a lot of videos, so it would be really nice if they could delete them, or channels that interesting card, channels that they would like to get rid of because it's had previous issues that they've disliked. So now we've unlocked 2 more things. Well, we've re-unlocked 1 and unlocked this. But I really don't have enough gems to purchase any of these, even though this might be a somewhat decent candidate. But yeah, I kind of just think YouTube in general is running dangerous, unmoderated algorithms and automations, and they are not being good stewards of YouTubers. I am happy my channel wasn't completely deleted. There is even some question now in my mind, frankly, though, of what reality is versus what the rules say, as far as, could you make another channel if one channel is deleted? Like, could I make another channel with the same branding, same name, and just make all new content and start over again? Or is it just you can never make a YouTube channel? Could I make a YouTube channel and make completely different content that's not about video games at all? Like, that there's what is written, and then there is what is done, which anyone who's seen YouTube knows that there's been plenty of YouTubers and YouTube channels who've gotten their channels deleted, and they have 2 or 3 backup accounts they just switch to, or they just make a new account and continue. So, I mean, it's almost built into what the YouTube experience is. This is weird because this almost feels like a Shadowverse image. The animation style, the weird mixture of a bunny girl and flying machines. It just doesn't. It almost feels like it's a crossover event, but to what? And see, because there's just the reality versus what they say, there's really no reason not to straight up just make a new channel, make a new account if your channel gets deleted. Like, what's the punishment there? They just delete your account again. Well, they've already done that. So, and that's part of the problem of having the ultimate punishment of deleting an account in general, is that for some people, yes, that has to be the ultimate punishment, but for a lot of people, it leaves no room for people potentially making honest mistakes and moving on with their and learning from it. Season points is a new thing apparently. You'll not receive points if you're not associated with a team. So how do you join a team? So they've made this whole new team thing apparently, and apparently done nothing with it, so yeah. This must be new because it doesn't seem like you can actually create a team. Well, let's see. 9-digit Duelist ID, team member 1, team member 2, select region. So is it just 2 people teams? Interesting. Teams are formed of 3 people. Teams compete against each other for season points. Okay, so I have no idea how you're going to convince people who play Yu-Gi-Oh! To form teams unless you already had a group of 3 people, and they'll make no progress almost certainly today on the proficiency. But yeah. So I guess that's the full story there. As for games coming out and looking at all the new games, well, I guess it's not the full story because I still have more to say. As far as looking at games coming out that on Steam, this opens up an opportunity for me to do something different and think about how I do things. And so my plan going forward was originally I would simply come over to the Steam settings, which let's just show that off, and just uncheck this box, which this feels like this on Steam has been improved too, and the example products are fairly helpful too, as far as what's the difference between some nudity versus frequent nudity versus adult only. So my first plan was just to uncheck these boxes. I don't think that's going to be my plan in the long run, because that just would create a scenario where I'm just censoring and effectively being censored by YouTube, or being forced to censor myself by YouTube, and it would just create a scenario where at the end of 2024, let's say, there would then be no adult games that I even know about that would have come out. And so that doesn't really work. I could flip those toggles, certainly, and I could have it so I personally still see the adult content and talk about it in more of a text-based form, or see the adult games and put it in a, say, annual fall list cleanup situation where I just go through the entirety of the fall list, which that's something I probably should do just to clean up the fall list in general, but it is also something that I feel like wouldn't really help that much. Whereas my second thought, which is the thought I'm leaning towards now, and I've really just had it, is that I'm just going to take a day off and not cover any new game that comes out on Steam today. Then what I'm going to do is, when I'm done streaming, I'm going to look at all the new games. I'm going to still put the adult games on the fall list, which is going to make fall list cleanups, which I didn't want to do on screen anyways. A lot of what I've been doing in this whole system has been about just making footage since I was working anyways, and just live streaming work. Some of that I think can be backed off for better watch time and just a better situation anyways, better quality content. So the plan is to look at all the games, put the adult games that are good on the fall list, close all the other adult games, close all the bad non-adult games, and have a very much smaller curated, these are the things I would have made a YouTube short on, presentation starting with the next stream. This is of course all assuming that my channel doesn't just get deleted again. Unfortunately here I'm gonna have to just surrender, because I'm gonna have to run to the bathroom. Had a bit of a false start here. So yes, the live streams are going to improve somewhat. Not the part about me having IBS and running to the bathroom far too often, but yeah, starting with the next stream, it'll be a much shorter experience of talking about games that came out on Steam. The news will stay the same for the most part. We'll just be careful about not showing any trailers for mature rated games, and the YouTube Yu-Gi-Oh part will still be the same. So hopefully that explains what I'm planning on doing going forward. And I'm gonna pause the video and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm not sure I really finished my thought, but before. But yeah, there's nothing YouTube could really do to stop me making videos. If I got kicked off of, say, almost every site, and I'm down to like trying to put videos on something like Rumble, where there's just not enough videos being published or enough viewers, or if I couldn't get a federated thing where I could host my own server. I mean, even at that, if somehow, I guess they publish a law, or there's a judge somehow said I couldn't make videos anymore, they really can't stop me from playing video games. At that point, I still have a massive Steam account of games that I haven't played, and a bunch of old games I can play again, and just really recoup a lot of enjoyment by just sitting in silence and playing a game instead of being a critic and having to constantly talk and criticize the games so it's fair use. And it's not like I haven't thought about scenarios since I have arthritis in my hands about the scenario of me not being able to play video games at all. So that there's backup plans on backup plans. If my Steam account got deleted, I have my Epic account, I have Amazon Prime. Again, there's backups on backups. I have my Nintendo Switch, which has at least 2 games I could play. If I couldn't play video games at all, I have a whole wall of old anime DVDs. Somewhere around 500, 600 anime DVDs. Several of which, entire series I haven't even opened or watched from 10 plus, probably 15 or 20 years ago, which I could engage with and watch there. plus I have streaming services to watch TV for whatever good TV you can possibly find, which maybe you can't find that much good TV. It's just, yeah. The scenarios would have to be just the absolute worst case scenario that I couldn't find things to entertain myself with. The much higher scenario is that I just need to desperately find some way to gain income, which for me would be extremely difficult, and even if it for your average person going and getting a job somewhere and working 40 hours plus to barely struggle will suck the life out of me. How do I know? I've lived that experience. And yes, there definitely was a 5-year period in my life where I was working a job and it was much more than 40 hours a week. It was sucking the life out of me to the point where I effectively lost 5 years of my life and accomplished nothing else but working a job to just maintain the status quo, really. That there's very little I have from that trade-off of 5 years of my youthful life at that point when I was younger and healthier and more capable and had more potential, if you're going to make those arguments. Other than maybe a tiny bit of retirement savings that I really couldn't live off of if I make it to retirement, and a pension that is probably going to be nothing, although maybe I'll get lucky there and they'll negotiate higher payouts on the pension. And it was the only reason I even have a pension is because it was a union job. A union job that mostly failed, and the union mostly failed because fairly quickly the management at the job succeeded in shutting down the entire office that I was working in and laying off all of the employees that work there. But yeah, there's backups on backups on backups. So that almost certainly led to a fairly blasé feeling I had around the whole channel being deleted. Like, I probably was suffering some underlying anxiety, and I really did think it was just gone for good. I thought they were just going to say, nope, we're good, we're gonna delete it forever. And weirdly, I was alright with that, which probably also talks a lot to the level of burnout I have with this channel. Right now, I've managed to stretch out making the smart on-air sign as an extended vacation from playing video games. So maybe when I get back to playing video games, I'll appreciate it a lot more, and I'll feel a lot more refreshed. But yeah, I don't know if that really was going to happen. The silliest part about all of that certainly would be making a product that is a smart on-air sign, having it designed specifically for streamers, and then for one reason or other, and this still could happen, not being a streamer myself, so not even really using the product, which that would be a little silly, certainly, but it's definitely a possibility. So apparently I'm going to summon just a 2 creature character. So I guess in a weird way that may have been the catch-up thing. Really, I should start calling it the catch-up section too. Let's get away from the accountability section as a phrase, if we're changing things anyways. Because, let's just be honest, I'm not really holding myself very accountable The beauty of being in charge of your own life as far as a boss is that you can also really just do whatever you want to do, and you're not really going to be held accountable by anybody, which is a double-edged sword, certainly. But yeah, also for the catch-up section, I worked on my small down air sign, which mostly, for the most part, was 100% just working on the help and the instructions, just squeezing and rewriting the text over and over again to get it to fit on a very small screen, which is what I'm mostly working on. Is just how can we take a small screen that really wants only about 4 or 5 words per line and break sentences so they still look good to either multiple lines or bulleted lists or other HTML tricks you might be able to pull off. And just what words can I replace with other words so that they're slightly shorter. And yeah, at what points am I going too far, just assuming everything will work. One of the things I added, and I hadn't really planned on adding, but it was smart to do it, is just the instructions in general on how to add a shortcut to the startup menu in Windows or Mac OS or Linux. The different ways to make sure OBS starts when you log in. That way the macros would always be running and ready to go for the advanced usage that you would install OBS but not actually use OBS to record or stream, but instead use the advanced scene switcher plugin to detect if something like Skype or Cisco WebEx or Google Meetings, things like that, are open and the main window that's focused on. Apparently he didn't know that's what Zeus could do, or he was hoping I didn't know that's what Zeus could do. Just a nice easy surrender there. So yeah, that's mostly what I was working on, trying to move the instruction code into its own separate header code, or the macro examples code into its own separate header file, so that there would be potentially a header file that I could say, here's where I go to edit the macro down in a defined preprocessor directive, which that won't cause any, or shouldn't cause any, lagging in the, or any change in performance. It'll just make the code you have to read when you're writing code versus it be in a different place from the code you have to read when you're doing the macro examples or looking at them. And I should do the same for the help files, but I haven't actually started to do that. The thing I realized though is I have probably about 7 days to get some working prototypes going, and I haven't even touched upon the aspect of the encryption and secure boot options of uploading the code. So the hope is that works absolutely the first time with no problems whatsoever and gives me no troubles, and that I can make new versions of the firmware and flash new versions of the firmware using the Wi-Fi manager uh, update page. That all just works perfectly. The hope of the instructions has also been helpful. Like, ideally I would want a fully printed out instructions. It sucks, but there's just no way to do this, and I would like to find a way to have it automatically make print instructions that also were derived from the HTML instructions. And yeah, now that I think about it, the real hope would be to have eventually build a flasher that would flash the chip, print out the unique Wi-Fi and password for every single device, and then on the same printer, then print out instructions, which would print out the instructions on probably very small shipping labels, printer, or thermal printing paper, which, yeah, I don't want CVS style super long ticket receipts, but that would logically make some sense. Like, it definitely feels like what I need is a thermal printer to print out one thing, and then I need a bigger printer that was probably a label printer, and honestly for the instructions, like glossy printed, professionally print made things probably make a lot of sense. That I suspect is a reason that things are glossy, in that they are a little bit more waterproof, and there's just always that assumption that in shipping things will be will get wet. But yeah, I really need to test the product a lot more. I need to have final products that actually turn the lights on and off, instead of working on a chip, my secondary chip that isn't wired to an actual sign. For the past few times, it has not sent a signal text-wise that it has received these signals, even though I'm pretty sure it is receiving the signal. So that it feels like there's something that is lost in the communication, in the connection. And I did make a small change that was causing problems that I had to work on before I started streaming today. The act of starting the Wi-Fi, if the Wi-Fi has already been started, disconnects it from OBS and doesn't maintain that WebSocket connection, which makes sense. But yeah, the core of the code I really haven't touched much upon in the past 4 or 5 days. It's mostly just to help, but then I might have to make some major changes, and then those major changes might reveal themselves to change the help, and so the whole thing could just unwind into issue after issue. I'm also working on the HTML to try and see if there's a way to make it preload the secondary setup page, or just load pages faster. And I did find a way in code, I think, to make the pages load faster, by just calling a function more often. But ideally, it is a fairly large page that the setup page has, exclusively because of the 600 keywords, I think it was, as far as a pull down option menu. Nobody really was expecting you'd ever to make an HTML page that would have 600 options on it, and for that page to be expected to load fairly quickly. So yeah, there's showing this stuff. There is some HTML code that has seemingly evolved a few different ways. There's a prefetch link to download things that you will use on this page. There is a preload link in HTML to load pages that you're likely to interact with next, and then that in part or in whole has been superseded and replaced with a larger API to tell browsers that you're more than likely going to go to this next page and start loading it, which is the weird scenario here. Honestly, if Wi-Fi Manager used iframes, it would load the secondary pages faster, but it would probably create a much more complicated setup, and anything it might load faster might also cause it just to be slower in other ways. So I don't think iframes are the real solution there. And yeah, as far as the catch-up section, I also watching Ghost Whisperer, still awful show. Maybe watching a bit of Fright Crew, and just kind of desperately digging deep into Prime Video to find anything worth watching. The new episodes of the new Jeff Lewis Hollywood Celebrity House Makeover series had 2 new episodes, so I watched that, which is fine if you like Jeff Lewis, and maybe nobody really should, but ooh, that's a weird animation. What did that do? Let's see. Negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn. Also, for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, your opponent takes no damage. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card activation. So he just stopped everything from happening. Okay. How is that going to benefit him? Gonna bring that out, and I take no damage, so did he just need to get that into the graveyard? Yes, he did. And apparently I can't activate any spells. So he's doing things based on things being in the graveyard. And it's past his attack phase, so there's like nothing he could do. It would seem. But yeah. I'm probably watching more TV than I think I am, still. And yeah, still playing on my phone a ton. The one thing I'll say is the 3 games are still the same, feeling very much like they're coming to the end. I ran that game that I said I had installed it was called Reverse 1999 or something, where I only went through it for a brief time, where the story was that time was going backwards and the worlds were getting erased, the eras were getting erased, and then you'd go back to a new era. All the voice actors in English were these British voices, very Cockney British accents, which sounded weird, certainly, for the anime girl avatars that they were depicting. But the actual gameplay mechanic was a card-based RPG game, and it would have just, even in the tutorials, I could tell this was a game that would have taken more effort and more attention, and that's not what I'm going for at all. I'm looking for games that would be automated if I'm going to play a game at all. And I'm not really looking for games at all. I had just installed that because I saw an ad for it and because I was bored at the time. And even Memento Mori, having two save levels. Is, let's see, do we have something here we want to summon? I don't think so. Like, I'm getting to a point with Memento Mori that the new save file is making enough progress forward that there isn't really a justification to stick with the old save file. Now, the old save file does have a few more characters still, and maybe a few other unlocks, but I could see potentially catching up and then having really no reason to play the old world save file, World 14 versus World 15. Meanwhile, on World 15 in the new save file, I have like 5,000 extra gems and nothing to spend on it. So just starting over, I think, works out fairly well. If anything, I'd say I might just stick with both save files, waste too much time, but not really that much time, because honestly, I'm only spending maybe 30 to 40 minutes with 2 save files playing Memento Mori every day. It's probably more than that, but it feels like 30 to 40 minutes because it is such an automated game, and because you hit these difficulty spikes that then gatekeep you from making any more progress. So it would make a decent amount of sense to continue to play the old save file to get a little bit of a head start of what the game will be like once you unlock new features. The game is very good about unlocking features while being very, very bad about telling you that you'll unlock new features when you hit certain levels. Some things it's pretty good about telling you. It shows you an icon with a lock screen over it and says, beat this world level to unlock this feature. But then there are also features as far as upgrading and reforging weapons that there's just not a button there at all until there is. So it makes it look like the game is a lot more simple than it actually is, and there could be a lot more of that the further you get deeper and deeper with the game. I wish there was more TV I could actually suggest watching, but Fright Crew is about the only thing that possibly I could say yes to as far as being worth watching. Let's go and activate one of these and see if we can remove. We've got light, dark, dark, so let's get rid of a light there. And then he won't have a light and dark in his graveyard. But yeah, I think that's probably enough. Let's see. That's probably enough warm-up for today. So let's just start talking about video game news. Tiny Build, according to GameDeveloper.com, is cutting jobs after, quote, an incredibly challenging year. It definitely feels like that is just consistently going to be the case. I imagine the amount of layoffs in the game industry is just a public version of what is happening and has been happening for years amongst a lower class versus people who think they're middle class, or people who are even lower upper class. That being said, I don't think a bunch of game developers being laid off are going to realize, oh, this is an unattainable system, and we can't let CEOs get 100 times more profit than what we're making, or otherwise just lay us off so they can get bonuses. I think there is a level of commitment once you just get that far, that you've had these thought patterns in your head and they've become established. Not arguably, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a case where adults get ideas just fully solidified in their brains by the time they're 16 or 17. It could be as early as that, and it's just incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to change your perspective and how you interpret things. And I'm probably not particularly immune to that. But one thing I did notice about myself is I'd heard about this potential Kroger-Albertson merger, and I don't know why, but I kind of thought like that would be a good thing, like, because I shop at Kroger, so it definitely felt like, oh well, this merger would lower prices and be a better thing for me in at least the short term, and that probably was advertised directly to me, and I just don't remember it being advertised directly to me as a good thing. But really, it took a different YouTuber to point out, no, this is a horrible thing, because it's going to create a duopoly where right now you maybe have a triopoly of Walmart, Albertsons, and Albertsons has a bunch of other sub-brands, and Kroger, which I don't think Kroger has any sub-brands, other companies that are under different names. And yes, this would be a merger that, if or when, probably when it goes through, would still be only the second biggest megacorp as far as grocery store, with Walmart still being the main megacorp. But yeah, for basic needs like food and things you find at grocery stores in general, if you weren't going to implement a universal basic income, having just a severely expanded family assistance program, or assistance programs in general, doesn't have to be families, it shouldn't be just families, would work. So, like the SNAP benefits, if that was just expanded to say everything in the grocery store can be purchased with SNAP, and everybody gets a certain amount of SNAP benefits, just for being a human being and a citizen and someone who's alive. That would work fairly well. Like, if we could even get to be a case where it was an economy that was 10% more, or 10% less capitalistic, I guess is the phrase to use there, and say everything else is still capitalism, but when it comes to stores these stores are going to be exclusive food and basic need products, and you probably would see a high level of things removed from the shelves if that was the way it went. And you might even start to see a lot less variety, which that sucks, but that doesn't inherently have to happen. There really is nothing that says if the government was running a grocery store and giving away food to its citizens, that they have to negotiate to the point of there being only one supplier of beans or bread or anything like that. If anything, you could easily say, nope, just maintain the same amount or grow the same variety, or justify through some fair system that product is just not being purchased, so it doesn't deserve to be. Maybe I shouldn't have. Yeah, it doesn't deserve to be on the shelf. And even if there were slight shortages every now and then, or loss of entire products, there's still shortages happening now and losses of entire products. But yeah, that's a tangent. Let's see. Yeah, I feel like I screwed up there. Guess we'll just see. We'll see how much I screwed up. It definitely feels, to get back to video games though, and layoffs related to video games, like there's been more than enough layoffs now that it feels like it would be very hard for all those developers to end up getting other jobs at other companies. We're not getting equal amounts of announcements of new companies, and honestly we may see a ton of them happen in January, February, after the new year, after maybe the fiscal new year in April. But yeah, it just doesn't seem like that's the case. I imagine a lot of programmers maybe are getting other jobs in other industries, but I also wouldn't be surprised if a lot of programmers are straight up just getting other jobs in completely different fields. They're working other kinds of jobs, not programming related, which, yeah, for programmers that's probably pretty hard. As somebody who was traditionally educated as a programmer, working a lot of jobs that weren't programming jobs really sucked because it wasn't the thing I wanted to do, and it wasn't the anything that was really in my skill set. So it felt like my skills were being wasted, and almost certainly were being wasted. rid of that. This bit of news from the Godot engine is slightly surprising. December 5th was the Godot Engine Foundation's 1-year anniversary, which I assume the Foundation started roughly at the same time the Godot engine started. I mean, it is possible, I guess, the Godot engine itself could have been 2 or 3 years older, but yeah. It highlights certainly a issue that it's the Godot engine being only potentially 1 year old. It's a very new piece of software in a world where programming engines, and in this case a IDE, what does I stand for? Development environment, something development environment. Interactive development environment, possibly, or yeah. In the world of programming languages and IDEs, you don't tend to have major success until your code is fairly well baked in and finished. It is possible that code these days can stand on the shoulders of giants of previous generations and get to a production level much quicker, but yeah, I wouldn't really bet on that. Nobody really talks about Unreal Engine 1 or 2. We don't start to see major adoption, as far as I recall, on Unreal Engine until we get to Unreal Engine 3. And then there was fairly quick progress that was made from Unreal Engine 3 to 4 to 5. And honestly, I think 4 in particular was glossed over, and we're moving now to 5. That is really to say nothing, though, other than it was surprising that to find out the Godot engine was this old. If anything, it's just surprising how successful it's been. Do we need to special summon? Probably not, but whatever. We'll jump through this whole process. You know what? Let's not do anything that could potentially screw up a victory. Let's just attack him. Because my concern is that special summoning might trigger something. Or Starbreeze, we had kind of talked about this, but I'm not sure we got the part that they were going to self-publish this Dungeons and Dragons co-op game. Otherwise, we had pretty much already talked about Starbreeze Studios developing a Dungeons and Dragons co-op game, and we shall see what that is, I'm sure, a few years from now. And then this is fairly big news. I don't pay a lot of attention to Twitch, but from what I saw on Reddit, which Reddit changed its icon and people are not super upset about that as far as I can tell. They slightly changed the way their Reddit looked. But yeah, from what I saw on Reddit, Twitch in Korea is a fairly big experience. So this is potentially fairly big news that Twitch is going to leave Korea completely in February due to a prohibitively expensive operating cost. This is another one of these stories which I've mostly not talked about because they haven't directly affected gaming, where there are countries that are attempting to add extra taxes and just demand money from mostly United States companies. Let's just face it, almost all of the big successful websites are US based. There are exceptions certainly, but they often are regional. Line, Baidu, Alibaba, AliExpress, things like that. A lot of those, however, are, like I said, regional and not used much in the US. There definitely have been just a lot of consolidations of what people do on websites and on the internet, and to the point where people are really only going to 5 or 10 websites anyways. I think WordPress becoming a lot worse than what it once was severely hurt that, and maybe federated concepts will eventually expand that, where people go back to making their own websites and controlling their own content, and people go back to the idea of actually going to different websites. But yeah, there's one in Canada around links to news sites, I believe, that is mostly targeting Google, and Google just agreed to pay $100 million towards that. This has also been done similar things have been done in the United States, as far as if music gets played anywhere, there is this law, I'm not sure it's really a law or just this argument, that you have to pay into this RIAA organization that then theoretically is putting money and giving the money to the musicians, but really is fairly unlikely to be doing that, if I was to guess. They're taking a large cut for themselves, or they're not equally distributing it. Even Weird Al said, like, Spotify's streams made him, he got like 80 million streams, and it's just about enough to get a sandwich after a year. And if Weird Al's not making any money on Spotify, then nobody else is either, I'm sure. We can attack here, so there's kind of no reason not to just do this full out. Yeah, if anything, I probably should have done even more. So we're going to summon this. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to summon this. And then we're going to activate this. Let's just go ahead and activate this too. But yeah, I think there's probably something in Europe, same idea. And there was something, I think, in Australia or somewhere else where they were targeting Google because Google was linking to snippets of what was in the book in a Google search. Which, that's a great example of something that would be a feature that would be helpful, not hurtful for end users. While it might be slightly hurtful for websites themselves. It's just good old-fashioned protectionism amongst different countries trying to protect their own industries or protect people that are at least lobbying the politicians in those different countries. And yeah, while I don't tend to side with Twitch very much, and even in this is potentially an example of Twitch making a bad business decision. I mostly do have to side with that decision instead of paying. Which Facebook, by the way, did refuse to pay the Canada law for linking to news articles and the link tax, as they were calling it, and just left Canada for a time. I'm not sure if they're still out of Canada. Is there anything I can do here? We might as well activate the effect and see. What I'm expecting potentially to happen here is just about that. That was pretty much all I was expecting. I was thinking maybe I would trigger something that that guy could do. This might be a case, or as far as Twitch leaving Korea, this might be a case where Twitch becomes slightly better because there's less thoughts or e-girls. Maybe I should just use the phrase e-girls going forward on Twitch, which might mean that Twitch has to focus a lot more on promoting good gaming content on their gaming streaming sites instead of just hot tub girls streams or bikini streams or whatever. But honestly, it probably won't change much as far as the Twitch experience for your average United States viewer, because I bet the people in Korea streaming on Twitch were speaking Korean only, and thus not getting that many viewers from outside of Korea. It is terrifying, as here I'm trying to start a business potentially and sell the smart on-air sign that anywhere and everywhere, any country anywhere, or anybody anywhere can sue you or try and screw with you in some way, and you can just have a business ruined despite doing everything you could possibly do. Another issue, certainly, as far as another company, again, I'm not sure this is a video game related, is India. It passed a law saying that even old iPhones have to be upgraded to USB-C. So Apple is now upset with the Indian government, who is telling them that they have a deadline that they have to either stop selling old iPhones, which is, I guess, what they're saying there. It would be insane to say everybody who has an old iPhone, even like an iPhone 1, has to send it in to replace it with USB-C. It'll be interesting to see, like, almost certainly Apple just stopped selling old iPhones at that point. And that might drastically shift what kind of phones people in India have, as they wouldn't be able to afford or want to spend the money to buy a brand new iPhone at high prices. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens when somebody designs a legitimately better connector than USB-C. And then it is going to be a difficult worldwide fight to get the industry itself to adapt to a new USB connector, a USB Type D, almost certainly. The industry won't want to adapt to it. The government won't want to adapt to it. We may very well be stuck on USB connections for a very long time. Which, at a certain level, I mean, the outlet plugs in your country are just going to be the outlet plugs of your country, probably going forward forever. And connectors at a certain level, just if they work, they work. No reason to really change them. No reason to make a USB-C connection thinner or smaller. Most devices, you can't really make a device much thinner or smaller. And we have the wireless charging technology good enough now that there's really no reason to not have everything be wireless. And since the USB-C requirements are all around the idea of not creating e-waste and having a bunch of chargers and cords laying around, wireless is not really an issue there. Although we might see government start to mandate specific standards and specific Wi-Fi connections a lot more. As far as all devices need to have Wi-Fi, all devices need to have cell phone connections. But I would be hard-pressed to try to even imagine what would be better than a USB-C connector at the moment, and what couldn't just be added to a USB-C connection. Because at a certain level, I think you could probably get, let's just make an assumption and say that some country has 360 volts. Probably not true. Probably it is very much a case that the highest you'll ever see is 240 volts. But yeah, if you're going to try and squeeze 360 volts down a USB-C connector, I could see a signal being sent so that just all of the, I think it's somewhere around 12 to 24 wires in a USB-C connection could be used to put that in parallel, and that still, I mean, it might be a little bit hot, but I wouldn't be surprised if you could actually pull it off, even at that high voltage and high wattage. And then that really would only become a case of thicker wires being added being needed anyways. It doesn't really create a situation where you need more pins. The only reason you need more pins is if you're going to try and do parallel data connections. The idea that potentially the chips cannot communicate any faster on a single wire, that we just hit the physical, as in physics, limitations of reality, and you can only go faster by having more data, more lanes on the highway effectively instead of a faster speed limit. Yeah, that would be the only case I could see where you would start to think about doing a fully parallel SCSI style connector. It was just really, really long. Which I could kind of see that. I could kind of see the idea of having a USB-C connector that was twice as long, so it just had more parallel data. But you're also running into the limitations of storage speeds and just CPU and GPU speeds at that point. Also, I'm gonna play it safe and get rid of that card. And go into battle mode. Destroy this card. And attack. And that's the safety play. But it doesn't do that much damage this turn, but it does eliminate his cards. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Mortal Kombat 1 is getting a story DLC following a quote big surprise, according to Ed Boon, the game director. Having seen this article and this headline, it makes me wonder if there is really not any story in Mortal Kombat 1 at all at this point. I think there's probably a story in Mortal Kombat 1, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is fairly minimal. I'm pretty sure there's a story in Mortal Kombat 1 because they were kind of bending over backwards to explain how the story and the timelines rebooted in Mortal Kombat 1 after the events of the previous Mortal Kombat game. Of course, I think it is a fairly ridiculous assumption that anybody really cares about the story that much as far as Mortal Kombat 1 is concerned. But I guess they can't also do much else. It is very much a case where they've already put out a bunch of characters, and either you like the characters or you don't, and they're not likely to do anything. The only thing I imagine they could do is they could bring in the Injustice characters in a storyline merge, and then just admit that they don't have the time and Injustice games probably won't sell. If they keep on just making Injustice games and Mortal Kombat games at the same time. And with AT&T acquiring Warner Brothers, which Warner Brothers had already acquired DC, maybe there's just some different people in charge now of the DC universe. And I know there's a new person in charge of DC Comics, but I mean, AT&T may be in charge more at the top of that, so yeah, I could see there have been this long-going discussion of, can we just put the DC Comics characters in the Injustice universe, from the Injustice universe into Mortal Kombat and not have these side games? Because in particular, Mortal Kombat 1 and Injustice both are rated M for mature as far as I recall. They definitely felt that way, so it's not like you were making Injustice games that didn't show blood and was a fighting game but wasn't doing the whole Mortal Kombat brutality and fatality systems. Injustice was just as bloody, if not more, than most Mortal Kombat games. So it's not like you're reaching a different audience by much there. You're just making Mortal Kombat with DC characters and then Mortal Kombat with Mortal Kombat characters. So that would be my guess as far as the big surprise. Oh, there's a new summon animation for Slifer apparently. Or very possibly I've just never seen the summon animation for Slifer. This guy gets 1,000 for each card in the hand. Okay. So how do we want to do this? Let's try a basic thing here. I'm I'm going to toss this. This one's setting a card now. The GTA 6 trailer cleared 101 million, surpassing the lifetime views of GTA 5's trailer very quickly. Now, noticeably here, I probably shouldn't have even have scrolled down here since we are talking about GTA 6 here. That's only just the best views for a video game trailer or a video game video. Captain Sparkle, speaking of YouTube, also kind of clickbaited and said he's going to retire from playing Minecraft content on his main channel, which is just to say he's going to still make Minecraft content on a secondary channel in live streams. He's just not interested in doing the editing and all that. So this guy has been stopped. So we probably should do everything we're going to do in this turn. I don't think there's a good argument around not doing everything this turn. Maybe I should have taken this one first. So I probably need to stop playing at this point, but I'm not 100% sure where the line is going to be if I'm just not going to talk about games, because the games definitely have been in the past the thing. But yeah, even with a 20-minute bathroom break, I've been going over an hour, so I think there is a decent argument to say this should be the last game. I don't know what this guy did to lose another 300 attack points. He should be at 1,000. Or what I did to make him lose that. The only thing that really could go wrong here is if this trap card does something big. So there you have Zodiac Tri-Brigade, fairly easily with one card, defeating Slifer the Sky Dragon, which, yeah, I almost wonder if this is a bot when you have S-Life as the name and Slifer icons, Slifer here, Slifer this, Slifer that, but also if you love Slifer, or that would make a lot of sense that you would try and decorate everything. Honestly, I think I could have probably reduced some risk by activating this guy's ability, which could have... yeah, this could have just destroyed this card. We'll see what happens next turn. Here's the Video Games Chronicles version of the story. Twitch's CEO blaming the network fees as being 10 times higher than in other regions, so there have been some, I guess, some acceptable level of network fees that Twitch has been willing to bear. And I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon is mostly staying out of it and just saying, you figure it out, Twitch, but we're not giving you more money. Let's see. Guess we could get timed out here if we're not careful. So this trap card's, if anything, going to help me. So I may have to activate this because I can't activate this ability, but it doesn't matter one way or the other. The only thing I could see happen going wrong here is if he did something like this. Alright, let's go ahead and activate this now. You can't target this card with effects, but you can destroy all the cards on the field. He's going to try and use the Monster Reborn. We have a Video Games Chronicle article here. Later layoffs have hit Embracer's New World Interactive. Saber Interactive confirms restructuring changes at the Insurgency Sandstorm developer. Right, so he's going to Monster Reborn. Probably Raw. That was the guess. No, he went with Slifer. Let's just double check. Doesn't look like anything would stop me from doing this. Yeah, it's kind of an epic game that we're seeing here, and it's still kind of nothing. Honestly, a little too easy with the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck. And we know there are better decks, better meta decks online that if I spent more energy on, or I spent more money to purchase the cards, would probably could have destroyed that if I activated this. Running out of time. I think the timers have gotten a little bit better on these. Definitely felt like it used to be a case where a lot more. Just go ahead and win. Definitely felt like it used to be a case where you wouldn't get as many dings and notifications as time was counting down, and it was just very easy to not pay attention. I got 4 legacy packs for that, which is still kind of a pathetic small amount of reward. And yeah, we're moving forward on the gold pass here, but still really doesn't matter much. The 3 daily quests I had, we got done. We got that done. Giving me a total of a whopping 145 things. We do have new wallpaper, so let's see if we can edit down to some new wallpapers. Set that one. Yeah, I have no idea who these characters are. I have no idea from what cards these are, but it definitely feels way more like something like Shadowverse or just your generic anime show compared to the art style that we typically do see in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which has stubbornly stayed as an older art style. Apparently Transformers Reactivate is a game, and apparently people have been patiently waiting for updates, but none will be revealed this year. I've never even heard of this game, and it feels like this is a case where they're coming out making a notification when there's only a few more weeks in the year for maybe purely silly reasons, maybe contractual reasons with the publisher. They are saying that they're shifting to the Unreal Engine 5, which, yeah, that definitely could cause a delay. But yeah, that is a weirder one, certainly. Oh, what was this? The Arthur Morgan actor is certain that a Red Dead Redemption 3 will happen, but he may not be in it. Which, okay, take that for what it is worth. This is from Video Games Chronicle, and I need to be careful about not going back to my main Twitter. Apparently, A Brother, A Tale of Two Sons as remake has seemingly leaked. This was one of those games that was critically acclaimed. I felt like the story got weak in the third act of a 3-act play, and then the game itself was an interesting experiment in a controlling mechanism, but it's basically just a gimmick and was never done again. You can't, the way the story goes, unless you're going to remake the story and change the events of the story. You can't really make a sequel. You probably can't make a prequel. You could make a spiritual successor, but you would just be making a game that's the same old gimmick. It is one of those games that is a fun little short adventure experience, and I wish there were more of those in general. So a spiritual successor would be my preference, but yeah. Everything wants to be AAA now. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com has an article that says the US official has scolded Nvidia for circumventing the export laws with sneaky GPU redesigns. NVIDIA's loopholes around export restrictions to sell products in China has hit a breaking point for the Commerce Department. So yeah, NVIDIA's in the doghouse. I'm sure they really don't care that much for selling video cards in China. The big argument that I've seen this sold as is they don't want NVIDIA to sell its chips. They could make artificial intelligence algorithms or beat the US on an economic level effectively, I think, more than a militaristic level. Although I think there are possibilities that this is true, or there definitely are suspicions amongst politicians that China just has a lot of ambition, if not already ability, to live deepfake politicians and other people effectively. And so there is definitely a legitimate concern that you could hijack a presidential inauguration or presidential speech in the United States, hijack that signal, deepfake a president saying something completely different, and creating a lot of chaos and panic or disinformation at least. But there is also an argument that the cat's out of the bag there. So does this mean anything for gamers? Not really, not unless the US government severely fined NVIDIA and they just raised the prices of video cards to counter that, which they have already raised the prices of video cards to a ridiculous level, and NVIDIA is not satisfied or not capable of being satisfied with the profits they're making from selling graphics cards to gamers, and they've long since stopped being satisfied with selling graphics cards to gamers. Instead, they've been selling it to Bitcoin miners mostly in the past few years. So yeah, they can't really raise the price anymore. They can't get more money that way. So them making different types of non-gaming graphics cards or chips in general that aren't based around GPU is the way I think they're going to try and go. They could certainly try to break into the mobile market. Now would be the time to say, hey, we're going to double down our efforts into being on things like the Steam Deck and on cell phones in general, and we're going to work on being a lot more efficient with power. But yeah, otherwise NVIDIA cards are not really necessary. If you have a 2080, if you have a 3080, you're good. If you have a 4080, you're great. If you have a 2070, 3070, or 4070, you're probably okay too. Particularly if you're not trying to push higher than 1080p or higher than even 144 hertz. Okay, so I did change my plugin as far as what tab it goes to when I middle click, and in this instance it's not really working out very well because it is just driving me back to the Twitter tab. We'll see how it works with the macro opened tabs in a second. There's a report that Bungie is at risk of a full takeover, according to GameDeveloper.com article. Full Sony takeover, which over a month after laying off 100 employees. Yeah, but yeah. Although at a certain level, they're saying this is, it seems to hinge wholly on the Destiny's The Final Shape expansion. So let's say the Final Shape is a flop, then Sony takes over Bungie as a failure of a company, and then has a bunch of employees who are not really doing a great job of making a good game. Does that really help Sony that much. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe Sony taking over could change things and Bungie could become an even better company. Or Sony would just take over things and lay everybody off and then hand it to a different team. Effectively, if you're failing and getting acquired, it is a very different story than if you're succeeding in being acquired. One changes potentially a lot with new funding and new management, whereas the other really just is going to be same boss, new boss, same as the old boss mentality. I saw this open world survival crafting game called Voyagers of Nera, and it looks a lot like that game Submerged, which there is something to that. Also, the Video Game Awards either are happening right now or are about to happen. Yeah, I always wanted the Submerged art style to be in more of an open world style game. Looking at this trailer, it doesn't really feel like it is actually what we're going to get there. Maybe some of that. Yeah, this feels much more like it's an MMO with a world that is a lot very flooded but still has a lot of violence. Something that might be procedurally generated islands like Minecraft, or which would make some sense. But yeah, I'd say this game, now looking at the trailer, is fairly far from Submerged. Yep. Which that kind of dashes my hope. This doesn't look terrible as a open world survival crafting game, and compare this to something like Minecraft and it looks very good, but you do have to certainly question how much content you can get into your initial release of a game compared to the years and years of additional content that a game like Minecraft has, and the fan base and fandom around Minecraft still being super strong, whereas almost every other survival crafting game loses its fan base and has lost its fan base fairly quickly. Scum VM is promoting their Fediverse connection, federated connections, effectively trying to move away from using Twitter, I am sure, as everybody is. I'm actually a little surprised that me contacting YouTube support on Twitter even worked. And then the Bethesda has, once again, and now you have to assume that this is with the blessing of Microsoft. I mean, you would think it would be. Bethesda has relaunched its paid mod store for the Skyrim Special Edition after major pushback and backlash and nobody liking the idea of paid mods in general. This time putting a couple of patches into it so it technically runs fine on the Steam Deck. The two things that I heard that they changed is they just programmed it to bring up the virtual keyboard when you typed in your name, and got rid of the original launcher, so it just runs by its automatic detected settings, which arguably are not the best settings to use on the Steam Deck to play Skyrim Special Edition. But yeah, that making a couple changes just to bring back the paid mod store, again, I suspect with Microsoft's blessing, does give us a hint at Microsoft still really not being the best steward to own companies. But this might also just be the last gasp of ZeniMax. We can live in hope that this is the last gasp of the management of ZeniMax, and we start to see most of those employees laid off. Although it doesn't seem like it's the case. We hear about layoffs again and again, and very few people, enough that they are being individually announced and named when they do leave a company as far as management goes. Yeah, we're not seeing significant amounts of management getting laid off, which is really what should be happening across all industries. So we should be seeing the middlemen, the lower management people getting laid off, and it just is not happening, and it just never will happen, because a lower manager can always blame an associate level employee and say they're garbage and that they should be laid off first. Lower managers also are not held to anywhere the same metrics as associate level employees. A lower manager's metric may literally be just how many people did you lay off, did you keep us on budget by laying off people below you. It's hard to get rid of management in general once you've established the system. But yeah, none of this really builds a lot of hope that we're going to see a new Bethesda or a new Skyrim or a new ZeniMax anytime soon. It seems like they are still very much determined that they want to make money from paid mods. Speaking of mods, there was this controversial mod for Baldur's Gate 3 that was changing the gender so that one of the characters, instead of having a lesbian relationship, I believe, had a heterosexual relationship by just changing the character gender completely and changing the artistic intent of the game there, and it has been banned. The mod seemed, from what I had heard online, to be part of a bigger mod called All the Alphabets, which was just effectively targeting potentially left-leaning progressive ideas and modding the game to be as conservative and far right leaning as possible, as far as just getting rid of any mention of homosexuality or transgender or anything like that. Which at a certain point, it's nasty. It comes off as rude and offensive to the artist and the original artist's intent. That being said, I have to side with the consumer, I think, a lot more than anybody else, and I don't inherently think that the mod should have been censored / removed from Nexus Mods. Nexus Mods have in particular said that they're not going to allow these kinds of things, but they probably should allow them. Like, if you are a far right leaning person and you don't want to see any homosexuality in the game you purchased, I think for your individual experience you should be allowed to mod that out. I don't agree with the way you're thinking, but whatever. I mean, you should be able to experience it. The worst case scenario there is you have a game like Baldur's Gate 3 get modded to be all heterosexual for one reason or another. And I could see people not having a political ideological reason for it. I could see people just having a sexual preference for that, and then that line is going to get blurred very quickly. If they just want the character to be male, or if they just want a character to be female, it's been done in the opposite direction. There's been plenty of mods that have taken male characters, I'm sure, and turned them into female characters. But yeah, the worst case scenario is you would own Baldur's Gate 3, which is unlikely for most conservative right-leaning people anyways, I think if they had left it up, they probably would have seen that very few people actually installed or used the mod, and that would have been the most damning thing you could have done. But yeah, you'd have to be conservative, but not so conservative that you hate video games in general and would play a Baldur's Gate 3 game based on Dungeons and Dragons, which most conservative people hate too for one reason or another. Usually it's the one reason of religious reasons. But yeah, you own the game, you install the mod, and then what? You raise your children and have your children play that game? That's about all you can do with it. You're affecting the children, your own children potentially, and that's about it. Like, Baldur's Gate 3 is not a game that would be installed on like public computers, and games in general aren't installed in public computers anyways. So yeah, I think you're doing a lot more harm by removing people's freedom of choice, by removing a game from Nexus, than you are doing harm by allowing people who might just be curious and might want to look at the mod for a second. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers even got big, if it wasn't just a lot of Streisand effect, people getting mad at it. Yeah. But yeah, I guess I generally have to just disagree with Nexus mods there. Their censoring and censorship is wrong, even though I'm obviously now going to be forced to censor my own content more on YouTube because YouTube's forcing me to censor it. And then let's see, Minecraft was promoting their new Minecraft channel in Spanish, which, yeah, them making a new Twitter channel in Spanish at this point is kind of crazy. Also, it's kind of silly. But I guess this is what you would have to do in general, regardless of whether you're a game company or you're just a video game critic like me, or any kind of presence on something like Twitter, is that if you have an English version and that's where most of your followers are, and you make a Spanish version, you would want to at least say, hey, maybe you're bilingual, maybe you understand Spanish better, here's a Spanish version of our Twitter feed. Which I imagine it will just say the exact same thing in Spanish over and over again. Same thing that Minecraft says in English. Right. I had my window in the wrong order, so that didn't quite work. There we go, we'll fix that. I still don't feel like I'm getting quite enough from this chart. Just looking at the chart, for the most part, my eyes glaze over, and then converting it to my own chart, which is broken, which should have had all of its bugs fixed before the end of the year, but is very likely not going to have all of its bugs fixed before the end of the year. Even that's not really that helpful. I talked about in the last stream that HTML5 has this view width setting where you can set the font to be a certain size. I think there, in my experiment now, having tested it a little bit, there's not a great variety there when you're in constrained limitations. I think it's really a case that when you go up in one size of any font size, you're going up fairly big instead of small fractions. Even though fonts are vector files, I don't think you can really, with the view width, and there's a V minimum and V maximum or instead of just view width. It maybe that changes things a little bit more. But yeah, I was able to get the text very small in my experiments, too small to actually really comfortably want to read. But I really wasn't finding a great way with view width to reduce the text just a little bit, like half a font size difference. Looking at this chart, it does seem like we're getting into bigger numbers once again, and so maybe we will see more people playing games as we get into the Christmas break. Oh yeah, I should also mention I saw a Slick Deals for, I believe it was BJ's Wholesale, selling GameStop gift cards, $50 GameStop gift cards for $37 and some cents, which is a pretty great deal, frankly. If you can get GameStop gift cards to purchase video games over the course of the next few years, or the next year, I guess the question is, how many could you get to stack that amount? And could you buy something like Steam gift cards from GameStop using a GameStop gift card? Probably not, because I bet they wouldn't let you transfer gift card to gift card without some kind of major fee. And then would they sell a Steam Deck at GameStop, which I don't think they really do. So then you're bound to buying a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X. I would say PlayStation 5 makes sense. Which, yeah, that is a thought. Buy 4 gift cards, save about $40 there, buy a PlayStation 5 on a Slick Deals, and save maybe another $40. You've got $80 off of a $400 device potentially. Yeah, looking at my chart here of the few places that even have data points, it seems like it is still very much just being consistent. Steam is having this VR Fest, which I haven't really done anything with. And then Game Award nominees being on sale. Have we looked at this before? Some of these games are on sale. A lot of these games are not on sale. So, Steam Deck OLED giveaway. Learn more. Interesting. Good thing I looked. Tune in to the live show on Thursday starting at 4:30 Pacific Time PM. Okay, so that's actually tomorrow that the event is happening. And enter for a chance at the TGA SteamDeck.com. Interesting. Promotion starts in 22 hours. See, so this is a whole different website it brought me to. Interesting. It's definitely the right prize to give away. I believe they were giving away something, probably Steam Decks again. I guess Return of the Obra Dinn was a winner in a previous year. Yeah. I'm scrolling down, it's showing me previous years. There is an argument here to just buy everything on this list if you were just trying to cover major games. Day of the Devs, I believe, is also happening right now. And then Wholesome Snack event, that seemed like that was something new last year as far as centering around wholesome games. Injustice 2 is selling for $4.99. But I imagine the big sale is going to happen in the case of a winter sale, that's probably going to happen in a week or two. It would be, I guess, slightly surprising. So because I've checked the checkbox, by the way, too, scrolling even on this front page, I should now no longer see any adult games. Which, yeah, that definitely puts this front page to be much more in line with what everyone else sees. That being said, if something is mislabeled, it still will be an adult game, and I just hope that there aren't too many mistakes like that happening. It does create a very weird situation that I've been talking about adult games for months and months and months. I've been covering adult games probably since at least January, if not a year or two or 3 or 4. I can't even remember when I started with the auto blur and all of that. But yeah, the fact that it has not been flagged up until this point also seems to speak to a level of how well the automated systems work or don't work. I would also say, I think when they deleted my account and brought it back, I potentially lost 90 subscribers. So I am also, with the warning, which may in itself mean that they would never really monetize my channel, I'm also feeling like I lost 90 subscribers, which may be very well 90 people who subscribe to my channel and have since had their own accounts deleted, or spam bots or spam accounts and things like that. But yeah, that doesn't feel good, and I can only say I think that's the case. I'm not really sure. Apparently they have a new Steam VR user interface as of October 25th, Steam VR 2.0, which, okay, looks interesting, I suppose is the right word to use. I mean, it just kind of looks like an interface. It's actually not that interesting. And I don't know what Steam VR 1.0 looked like, so I don't have any real way to compare the two. And my interest in VR is still incredibly low. I don't know why there's so much of a picture here. So, yeah. I just really couldn't imagine that I would ever actually care about Steam VR or VR in general. And I think the fact that they're promoting fairly old VR games too highlights that there really hasn't been a lot of new VR games in the past few months or years. Okay, so let's see if my middle click works here as we go through the Video Games Chronicle articles. Let's see, Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone 1 season patch notes released as new content launches. Supermassive single-player Dead by Daylight game will be shown at the Game Awards. Okay, so what I'm thinking is happening here is when I middle click, it's going to the one on the right, or it's going to the one we were last at, which in this case I left this open because I want to deal with it later. If I drag the tab all the way to the left, let's see what happens there. see what happens now. Bungie's position as an independent Sony subsidiary is reportedly under threat. Sony could take complete control of its studio if it fails to meet financial targets, it's claimed. Yeah, it could, but that doesn't mean it will. Is everything that was announced at the Day of Devs Game Awards edition. Day of Devs is I Am 8-Bit and Double Fine. Microsoft owns Double Fine. I don't know if Microsoft owns I Am 8-Bit. So it is an event that maybe has a little bit of history, but honestly should probably just be merged into the Game Awards, unless it is really just a case that there are too many notifications to all be at the Game Awards, or the Game Awards wants to strictly be about giving awards to games that have already been released, where this is potentially announcements of new games. But yeah, either way, the argument I guess would be that these notifications should probably be more separated out instead of a couple days, a couple hours difference, or right before. Apparently Braid Anniversary Edition, which we already knew about. Cryptmaster, it's not a game I recognize. Dome King Cabbage is not a game I recognize. Drag Her, which seems to be a fighting game of drag people, ladies in drag, which, yeah, this is potentially a joke game that maybe does not rise to the level of quality to be presented amongst the set of group of fairly high quality looking games. A game called Flock. Then we have Hermit and Pig. Yeah, these are pretty much all new except for Braid Anniversary Edition, which I guess would make some sense too if the idea of Day of the Devs is to promote new independent games, which probably is. Kind Words 2. I don't know why you really need a sequel to Kind Words when all that was a very low effort asset flip game that encouraged players to send kind words to other players, and that's the entire gimmick of the game. Almost off the Jeff Minter story. Who's Jeff Minter? You, I guess, made Tempest 2000 on the Atari Jaguar. Yeah, knowing the names of old developers is not my forte, per se. Yeah. All of these games seem very indie and small. Open Roads I do recognize. And so, here's one called Resistor that looks almost exactly the same. It's like, here's a game where you're in a car driving, and here's a game where you see a screenshot of being in a car driving. Although, I bet the game is actually very different. Thank goodness you're here, I know. I've seen that. So some of these have been announced before. But yeah. I don't think any of these have been given specifically major coverage or announcements to make, though. Maybe some of these have release dates or already had release dates. Maybe each of these put out a new video, but that's pretty much it. There were 28 titles in total. Yep. And I really question the point of an event like this. It does make sense for small indie games to be grouped together. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for events to happen when you know the next day everybody's going to have completely forgotten about all the games mentioned in that event and the event in total, because the Game Awards is going to happen. So here they've started to split down the information talking about Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story. I feel like Llamasoft was actually the name of his company, if I vaguely recall. Then you can see here's a full list of games that would be included in these, and they're all very old games with fairly interesting titles, but something called Psychedelia for the Commodore 64 really is not going to be anything. There's Tempest 2000 and Grid Runner Remastered are probably the only two games you'd want to play there if you want to play any of them. Like a Dragon Gaiden's English dub is coming this month, according to Video Games Chronicles. Brothers of a Tale of Two Sons remake is seemingly leaked, we talked about. Arthur Morgan not being in Red Dead Redemption potentially, we talked about. The latest PS5 system updates add security fixes, which is, say, Video Games Chronicles is talking about the patch notes, which really don't say anything at all. Interesting. Why is there an ad showing here? Maybe that's because they're specifically talking about the PlayStation 5. Or maybe they've changed their website. Right now, Amazon's got the PlayStation 5 for $500. Best Buy's got it for $500. Walmart or Walmart Plus has got it for $789, which is way overpriced. We already talked about Mortal Kombat Story DLC getting followed by a big surprise, which the other big surprise may be just Ed Boon is retiring, or that this is the last Mortal Kombat game ever. We talked about GTA trailer getting a lot of views, which obviously a lot of people are going to look at it. It definitely feels like there's probably some non-organic attempts on Reddit to promote the GTA trailer, or maybe there is just a lot of hype around the GTA trailer, although I wouldn't say that there's a huge amount of hype around GTA 6 or GTA 5, whatever the number is. We talked about Twitch. Xbox's Winter Game Fest includes 33 demos of new and upcoming indie titles, which the art here in particular feels weird. Idea at Xbox, just not really. I think getting the right background and the right font and making anything that looks great here. It looks like this is supposed to be a present, but it just doesn't have that same feel as other images you would see. They have a whole list here of games, and I'll just quickly scan them and see if anything looks interesting. The Pinball FX and Pinball M, with the Pinball M being the mature or scary pinball tables. The Legend of Zelda movie director would, quote, love it to be like a live-action Miyazaki. Wes Ball says his whole life has led up to this moment, which arguably you could say any moment in your life that's happening now, your whole life has led up to, because your life is linear as far as we know. And yes, who wouldn't want to be called a live-action Miyazaki? I guess the question here that we need to clear up is, when he says Miyazaki, he means Studio Ghibli's Miyazaki, the maker of My Neighbor Totoro and a bunch of other Spirited Away, bunch of other animated movies that technically would be called anime in Japan, but arguably are very far away from being influenced by anything else animated in Japan, and most of the Miyazaki movies are instead influenced fairly by European and British cultures and mythos and history. It's also worth mentioning that The Boy and His Crane, which is out now in the West, was very poorly received, and Miyazaki has not really had a good new movie in several attempts. He's old, he keeps trying to retire and can't retire. His ideas are repetitive and played out these days, is the criticism. So when you say you'd love to be a live action Miyazaki, you really probably mean you'd love to be a live action version of Miyazaki when he was making Spirited Away, when he was making My Neighbor Totoro, when he was young and youthful and making his first successful series of movies. You probably don't want to be like him now, where he seems like he can't win for trying. And I'm sure when you throw out the name Miyazaki, some people could fairly enough have confused it with just Shigeru Miyamoto, the maker of Link and Zelda and Nintendo, Super and Mario, which you could say the exact same thing. He could easily say he would love it to be like a live action Shigeru Miyamoto. Which, yeah, that would make more sense. This is another example, certainly, of making an article or doing an interview and there really is just no actual information in the headline, so there's almost certainly no actual information in the below the fold paragraphs. And particularly for a live action Zelda movie, we'll just have to wait and see if it succeeds. The Mario movie is just about out on US Netflix, for the people who haven't seen it yet. Activision shows off Warzone's new maps and confirms that it only supports 100 players, which, okay, that sounds like a decent enough number of players. I don't know if you really need any more than that. It would be different if every map was a server and the server only could hold 100 players. Even an MMO game with only 100 players wouldn't seem completely out of the realm of reasonable. And then I think we've talked about most of this news already, so we'll try and go through this fairly quickly. Just go ahead and close things we'd already talked about. Yeah, I am still very interested on this new era, new energy teaser as to what that could really be. And yes, I'd love to see a Banjo-Kazooie game done in modern times. I guess I need to drag this tab further to the left. Now remember, today we're going to have a very abrupt ending compared to previous streams. For today in particular, but also in general. Man, it looks like tabs are all over the place. I didn't run the macro twice. I'm almost 100% certain I didn't do that. So why are tabs all over the place? Why does this never work consistently? And why does it break in different ways consistently? But yeah, there's going to be an abrupt end today because I'm not going to look at any of the games on screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all the games ready and talk about them on a slight delay the next stream. So over the course of the weekend, that would be Saturday and Sunday between a Friday and Monday, or if I missed a day, it would be longer, obviously. But yeah, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is when I stream, so you're talking games that came out still within the past week, and it's still going to be a case where making YouTube shorts are going to delay when the YouTube shorts come out by a fair amount anyways. I'm kind of assuming that this is going to be a cover art style image, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a completely different image that GTA 6 has for its cover art. Not that cover art really means much. Apparently, the Elden Ring producer says its expansion will be a little while yet and compares it to Bloodborne. I don't know if this sale is still on. Yep. I definitely would want to buy this. If I'm just trying to buy a Blu-ray player, buying an Xbox Series X versus a PlayStation, knowing that PlayStation just lost the negotiations for like their storefront of Discovery shows. Yeah, there are some reasons why if you're just going to get a Blu-ray player to get a PlayStation instead of an Xbox, but for the price difference, if this sale was still going on, that would make a lot more sense. Assuming it does play 4K UHD discs, which I think I looked that up and then immediately forgot whether the Series X or the PS5, either one of them play 4K UHD discs. Yeah, a lot of these are really, really old articles, which I have no idea why it would go back this far. I don't feel like I programmed the macro to revert to an older state if something went wrong. But whatever. We're now to the Gamatsu articles. So, yeah, this is where we'll start to see things. So then I guess the question here is, when I click on a Steam page to look at a game, from Gamatsu, you're fairly likely to know that that's not going to be an adult game. Or I would click on it if it was an adult game from Steam and I would get a warning. So I think we're still safe to do things as we were doing things there. Mystery Adventure Duck Detective The Secret Salami announced for PC. So yeah. Even if I was to completely stop looking at all the new games that came out on Steam, I could still talk about all the Gamatsu Game Press announcements. This Europa game I've already got on the fall list. It launches April 16th. We now know the launch date. Eastward DLC Octopia launches January 31st for the Switch and PC. Do we have a Steam link to this? This one's already on the wish list and it's from 2021, so it has an argument to, let's see, can we make YouTube shorts on DLC is the question. I'm not sure I ever figured that one out. See, Baldins adds PS4 and 5 support in Switch versions. Choose your own story multiplayer game. Another one I haven't seen, but apparently has been around for a while. Vampire Survivors Among Us themed DLC called Emergency Meeting has been announced. Can we find that DLC content? Yes. Before we do that though, let's check Vampire Survivors is on the wish list. Although in all fairness, even if somebody was to gift me Vampire Survivors and I probably wouldn't play it much. Just doesn't really look like anything. A game called Snacko is early access for PC. So as long as we still use Gematsu as a news source, then we're going to see a decent amount of games in the live streams regardless. Genesis Noir sequel Nirvana Noir has been announced for the Xbox Series and PC, which again would be an example of having to check if I decided I cared about Genesis Noir or if other people cared about it enough to review it. Go Town Couch Co-op playtest for PC set for February. This one's already on the follow list. The middle click mouse button seems like it might be working when closing tabs. For the most part, I just need to tweak it, I think, one more time, and I might have figured it all out, maybe. The adventure game The Mermaid's Tongue has been announced for consoles and PC. This is an interesting flat, like, colored pen style. That's what I would call it, marker style animation. Lightyear Frontier launches in early access March 2024. I already have that on the follow list. Built farming with mech robots, it looks like. Cozy Place adventure game Pine Hearts for PC launches Q1 of 2024. There is a scenario here where even if I didn't show the games during the live streams, me curating them and making YouTube shorts would still happen. Unless the YouTube algorithm just starts to hate every single page that looks like that's from Steam, which that would be crazy, but YouTube would be crazy sometimes. This game doesn't have a Steam link yet. Let's see, visuals and audios inspired by 1974 to early 80s anime and manga. It does definitely have that style for visuals. Let's see if we can get a better look on that. The language to describe these different anime styles still feels very rough in my book. I just really haven't figured out the right words that would make people understand what these art styles look like, particularly if people have never seen these art styles before. But yeah, this is the days of animation. It's a little bit blurred because of my blur plugin. Of what anime looked like and what anime was in its early second generation, I would say, style, with the first generation being kind of black and white and very simplistic animations. These animations were in part in this second generation evolving away from the comic book and cartoon style of something like Lil Lulu and those animations in the West, and fairly evolved away from the animation style of Disney. In particular, I think a lot of animators were originally influenced by like Disney's first animated movie, Sleeping Beauty, full-length movie, I believe, was Sleeping Beauty from Disney. They did animations before then that were shorts. But yeah, I think a lot of people were inspired by that, and then evolved from that point and didn't really have to take any more inspiration from Disney, which, in fairness, in that whole era, not a lot changed between the different animations. They were all very well polished and hyper realistic in their style, but you don't start to see Disney try to do any kind of crazy art styles until nearly the point where they start going CGI and 3D. It's all pretty much the same art style over and over again. Moving on though, even at this rate, the stream is going to be long. Open Roads has added a Switch version and launches in February, which we'll just double check. Wow, I would have sworn this was already on the follow list, but apparently not. I still do need to do a follow list cleanup at some point, regardless of whether I do it on screen or off screen. But I definitely also don't feel like I'm planning on doing that anytime soon. So I don't know how to particularly justify that. Inherently, if I'm curating things, I'm also not going to be doing the follow list cleanups anymore, which will make streams shorter too. This Vampires and Masquerades has added yet another faction, Bloodlines 2, Vampire the Masquerade. Here you have registered trademarks and trademarks. I question if you really need registered trademarks and trademarks in the title of a game, but it legally probably helps. It definitely feels like there should be a section in this Steam pages, in particular, as far as legal. Something that just says here's your copyright, here's your trademarks, here's everything you're claiming. Yeah, as I understand it, using the R with the circle around it as far as a registered trademark comes with some criminal liability if you misuse it and aren't actually registered as a trademark. So you can't actually use the R, even though you obviously can. It's a symbol you can type. So, and yeah, I imagine most people could claim the registered trademark, but I don't know if it really gives you. It probably gives you a little bit more protection, but probably not that much more than just using the trademark symbol itself. T-Witch Simulator Loose Leaf announced for PC. Now what I'm noticing here, now that I know I'm not going to be looking at games, is that I'm actually talking less about the games from Gamatsu. So I don't know why that would be the case, other than maybe I'm just a little low energy today. A romance visual novel called Ambitious Mission is coming to the PS4 and Switch on March 21st in 2024 in Japan. And I guess this would be the thing that might still be an issue here, is that maybe we should be a little bit more careful and not even show the anime girls in bikinis too, or at the very least we should probably be fairly brief about it and just scroll down and do it like that. Yeah, there's no Steam link to this one. The Boss Rush action game Nano Apostle has been announced for PC. Which this is maybe a game we've already looked at, or maybe not. It does have a Steam link. This feels like this is increasingly going to be the new color palette we see. Probably has been fairly a long time since anime has been 100% bright reds and greens and blues of a color palette. A lot of shows have always been very dark. in the color palette, at least. But yeah, it definitely comes off as a different feeling game when it is those darker colors. Tekken 8 has a gameplay trailer for Sergei Dragunov. If you want to check that out on Gamatsu. The Famitsu review scores for issue 1827 are now available, with this game getting 27 out of 40. Motoi Solo No Girlfriend Since Birth getting 31 out of 40. Salt and Sacrifice getting 27 out of 40. Ooh. Either that is a terrible Switch port, or Salt and Sacrifice is a very underwhelming sequel to the Salt and Sanctuary game. And then the Submerged Hidden Depths game coming to the PS5 and 4 getting 29 out of 40. So not particularly good game releases this week, which maybe doesn't really matter much because we're so close to Christmas and the end of the year. But yeah, that is disappointing scores for all 4 games. The game Cards RPG The Misty Battlefield has a limited time demo now available on PC. Let's see if maybe that would give us any reviews. I guess maybe not, because you get the review. You'd only be able to get the demo, and then I don't think you can review the demo. Which it definitely feels like it would make more sense to have a demo page that you could reach somehow and have reviews on a demo specifically. You'd probably want that feedback, particularly if you're giving out a timed demo before the game is released. But yeah, Steam doesn't seem to support that. Touch Detective 3 and the Complete Case Files launches March 28th in the West. I assume this might include the 2 previous games, or let's see. Touch Detective 3 plus the Complete Case Files includes all 3 mainline Touch Detective games, making this the first time Touch Detective 3 will be localized and officially released in English. These were Nintendo DS games that I imagine leaned somewhat into the touchscreen gimmick of the Nintendo DS. And yeah, increasingly we will see companies struggle to sell gimmicky games that were on the DS, as now the DS store is totally shut down, and they can port it fairly easily to the Switch. A little bit more difficult to port it to computers that may not have touchscreens. A lot of them don't. A lot of the DS games, I imagine, are not particularly great quality anyways, and not worth porting and won't sell that much. It is nice at least to see Nicholas here trying something here. And they are bundling it in with a mascot character that I don't recognize because I've never played these games. But yeah, looks like some kind of mushroom character. Turn-based roguelite dungeon crawler The Land Beneath Us launches in 2024 for the PS5 and Xbox Series and Switch and PC. Maybe only via the Microsoft Store. Have a Nice Death is now available for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox One and Series. It had already been released on Steam and very positive overall. Already on my wish list. Contra Operation Galuga characters, trailers, details, and screenshots are available. The idea that a Contra game would possibly succeed is surprising that you'd even try. So you've got 3D versions of a Contra game. I could kind of see this working though. If it were a case that the original Contra games played very well, which they probably for the time played somewhat well, and then you were to elevate that to modern gameplay standards, and you could just run around the game and it's just like a lot easier and you can't die, or you have to really play terribly to die. I could see it working. I think Contra is probably one of those games that almost certainly needed a Konami code or had the Konami code in it, if not Contra being the place that had the original Konami code. And so if a modern version of that effectively took the assumption that everybody who was playing Contra, the original Contra, was using the Infinite Lives Konami code, so a modern remake should just make it easier so you never die, that could work. But it is still a gameplay style where you're going to platform a little bit and run around and shoot a lot, and there aren't a lot of games in modern time where you play that way. And yeah, I'm not sure if there's a lot of demand to have games where you run around and play that way. This does look like you have a lot more characters to play as, and that there's a lot more diversity in the characters too, which, yeah, okay. When the characters probably don't matter that much, it's probably not a terrible thought to throw some more characters in and more diversity in. Honestly, if every game added 2 females and a male minority into every game, it would work fairly nicely. Every game that doesn't already have that. Although it would be a lot, certainly, if you say took Zelda Breath of the Wild and then all of a sudden squeezed in a new female protagonist or 2 and a male minority protagonist in an established series. But there are plenty of secondary characters that can be added to a Zelda game at any point. Moving on, Partial Corpse limited time demo is now available for the Xbox Series. This is another game that I feel like I've missed. Apparently I didn't. Yeah. The idea of web pages loading, prefetching, or preloading still doesn't seem like it really works with Firefox that well. I think I have that enabled in Firefox, but clearly when I click on these links, they aren't preloaded. Whereas ideally I would just want all links that are one link away from the page I'm on to be preloaded. That would waste a lot of RAM and a lot of space, but it would speed things up. Atari 50th, the anniversary celebration holiday content update is now available, adding 12 new titles. Is this on Steam? Yes, it is. And surprisingly, it is actually very positive. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this on the wish list. Although I frankly would have a hard time covering or playing these games, since I have just no nostalgia for them at all. Wulong Fallen Dynasty DLC Upheaval of Xinjiang, Xinjiang is, I believe, how you pronounce that, launches December 12th. Arad Chronicle Kazan has been officially titled The First Berserker Kazan, with a gameplay trailer set for the Game Awards. So it seems like they have changed the name slightly. And then Petite 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 launches December 7th, or PPP. Persona 3 Reload has yet another character trailer if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. And then GTA 6 launches in 2025 for the PS5 and Xbox Series. No PC talk and no Switch talk. And then The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered has a no return mode trailer if you want to look at that. And then Dragon Age Dreadwolf has the Thetis Calls trailer, full reveal set for 2024. And that brings us to GameDeveloper.com, and when we hit this point, that means we're pretty much already done, because we can burn through the GameDeveloper.com articles very quickly. We already talked about this. The Communication Workers of America, people move into the Game Workers Union, to being Game Workers Union also, with the GWA being the name used for some locals of the CWA. Apparently has established some AI principles for workplace union bargaining. The CWA doesn't want to stop AI, but wants to ensure the technology is used in a way that benefits all workers and unions as much as possible, which is exactly what a union should be focused on, if not just focused on benefiting all unions, although unions tend to fall apart very quickly if they aren't benefiting all workers. There is a significant amount of workers in the United States who are not in a union but benefit because of unions and union negotiating. Don't know if I really want to boil down more into this. I don't think they really have too much to say at this moment, other than we want to discuss AI and we want AI to be part of the bargaining table. It will be much more interesting and much more relevant information when the CWA forms a union and gets to the point where they negotiate their first contract, and part of their first contract or their first strikes are going to be around AI. Even the SAG-AFTRA focus around AI and it being reported around AI, I think was probably a misnomer, and they should have just been more focused on standard boring issues like pay and workers' healthcare and things like that. We already talked about this. Phantom Inspiration and the Ethical Auteur with Xavier Nelson Jr. This is apparently an article pointing to a podcast. Everybody seems to have a podcast now. I didn't realize GameDeveloper.com was one of them. And then Twitch leaving Korea. League of Geeks pauses Jump Light Odyssey's development after a significant layoff. Quote, "We were forced to choose between pausing development on Jump Light Odyssey or shutting down entirely," which sounds like you should have just shut down entirely, because if you're not making any progress forward, what are you doing? Is your company just in stasis? Are you paying no employees at all and just having a company that is just statically sitting there? Because you just really can't pause progress unless you're working on a different game, which I guess is a possibility. Or they're taking side jobs to work on different games, which is definitely a possibility. Because yeah, in business you're going to have buildings you've leased and rent you're paying, or at least taxes on buildings you purchased, and the idea of just pausing is not really a viable option. And that is definitely a case where starting a business can get you over your head very quickly as soon as you're having to pay taxes on a quarterly basis, even if you're not making money, and you're having to some companies have to do that at least. you're having to pay mortgages or taxes on real estate on an annual basis. You just constantly need some form of money coming in. As for the game Jump Light Odyssey, it looks kind of interesting on this one screenshot, but that's, I guess, about as much as I can say about it. Then we already talked about US officials scolding Nvidia, and then Embracer laying off staff at the Insurgency Dev New World Interactive. And so then that would bring us to the follow list cleanup, which in this case the follow list cleanup didn't even run because it was broken. And then that just brings us to the end of the show. And so inherently what I'll do on the macro is I'll have the macro run and I'll just move the end of the show tag to a different point so it happens before the follow list cleanup, and then I will still probably off screen do the follow list cleanup just so I'm constantly making some progress there, and I won't show any of that or mention any of that, which is fine. And then I'll look at all the new games, which is what I'll do after this stream, is I'll look at all the new games and have them ready to show for the next stream. Although it is going to be weird too, because all the new tabs I've opened in this window will be mixed together or in their own little separate section to the left, hopefully, based off of all the new games. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to make a dividing line and say only these new games are the ones we should be talking about, and so they really should be in their own window. So I probably should just break the macro out and run the new games macro separately after the streams and look at new games there. That would also mean I could potentially start streams earlier because I'm not waiting for the macro to finish, which it can be very slow, take 10-20 minutes to run, mostly because it takes 10-20 minutes for all the pages to load without it giving up or getting stopped by the servers for accessing data too fast. But yeah, we've got a new plan. So far it doesn't seem like this episode was deleted. I don't think like we covered anything that would have been anywhere close to unacceptable by YouTube's rules as I understand them now. Yep. And so, yeah, I've got more work to do and I'll do it off screen. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.